Good afternoon, guys. This is another podcast by Glenda, and our topic today is talking about movies. With us today, we have Josh Schimmel. Hey, Josh.
Hey Glenda, thanks for inviting me on the pod.
Thanks for joining us. So, we're going to be focusing on this topic films related to science and technology. And well, we know that you really like movies of all times, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome. So we're very excited to find out about what film you chose. And could you please also tell us a little bit about the plot of this film? So the floor is all yours.
Sure. Okay, so the film I've chosen is called Weird Science. This is a movie that is about, is kind of like a reimagining of Frankenstein. So the idea of this movie is it's the kind of main characters are two boys who are kind of teenagers and they're a bit of the outcasts at school, and they fancy these two girls in their class, but they are dating, the kind of cool kids of the
Mhm.
school. So what they decide to do is they decide to create the kind of ideal, perfect woman, and they do this by using kind of cutting edge computer technology, connecting it to a kind of doll and down hack. I think they hack some government computer, and kind of this perfect, beautiful woman is created through a kind of power surge, a bit like Frankenstein. And then this woman is also kind of magical. She has kind of powers, and she decides to help them impress these two women of their real dreams.
Wow. Well, it sounds quite interesting. Um, well, we would like to know a little bit more about where and when this movie is set, because it sounds like a really visionary kind of movie for its time, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of scene from the movie, and it's one of the few scenes that's set perhaps outside of school or houses. Um, the movie itself was made in 1985, and so it's set then. It's of its time. It's not in the past, but it kind of has a timeless-ish feel to it. They're kids who go to school in a kind of classic um, American high school. But in the movie, it is said that they're in Chicago, or perhaps the outskirts of Chicago. And at one point, they go to this bar, which is said to be in the kind of heart of Chicago.
okay, very interesting. So now we would also like to know, because, well, I know that you really enjoy talking about directors and learning about them. So who was the film directed by?
Okay, this movie was directed by John Hughes. Um, John Hughes really had a kind of monopoly on famous movies in the 80s. He was this director who created um, kind of very famous movies and also kind of cult classics. So this movie is written and directed by
Mhm.
John Hughes. He also made films like 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, which has kind of become a very cool
Oh,
classic.
right. I saw that one. I really enjoyed it. It was.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think it was like really different for its time.
Definitely. Also, have you seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
No.
Ah, that's an amazing movie too. But unfortunately, it didn't involve science or technology. Otherwise, I would have probably picked that. And he also wrote a little later on in his career. He wrote Home Alone. So he's
Oh.
got these kind of classic movies that could be very superficial on the surface, but he always managed to kind of add a level of depth and
Mhm.
humor, which I think have kind of allowed these movies to still be well regarded today.
Okay. Yeah, pretty cool. It sounds really timeless indeed. All right. Well, the next question that we would like to discuss is this movie famous for its special effects? Like, were they cool for their time?
Yeah, I think the special effects are uh, maybe not maybe not like cutting edge, but
Mhm.
they are created in a very interesting way, and so it has a style to it.
Mhm.
Um, Without giving away any too many spoilers, one of the lead characters' brother gets turned into like a slime monster, and the kind of there's a very unique style to it. I think there are
Mhm.
also kind of rocker motorbike guys at one point in the film, and there's kind of effects to do with the way they look, but
Mhm.
it's not, you know, a CG fest, or it's not even anything like Jurassic Park where they use kind of state of the art models or anything like that.
Mhm. Okay. How about the soundtrack?
Yeah, I mean it's a classic in the sense of it's full of those kind of 80s songs. I believe the soundtrack was performed by Danny Elfman, who's a very famous soundtrack guy, um, especially in the 80s and the 90s. Right, he made loads of soundtracks.
Okay. And what about the cast? Do we know any of these people who's starring it?
Probably not. I think the most famous guy is the one of the main. Oh, actually, I tell you what. Yes, there is a very young Robert Downey Jr. in this movie.
Oh, no way.
He plays one of the cool kids, but it's not a. It's a supporting role, and he's probably like the fifth main character in it.
Mhm.
And the main character, or one of the two boys, um, is played by, I don't know the actor's name, but he's in a lot of John Hughes movies. He's also in Breakfast Club, The Breakfast Club.
Okay. Perfect. So, talking about the cast, who was your favorite character and who was it played by in the movie?
Sure. I think, in my opinion, the best character is probably the kind of perfect ideal woman. She is played by Kelly LeBrock, who I don't think went on to have a particularly big career, sadly. I
Mhm.
think what I like about the character is it would have been very easy for the character to be written in a way that made her very kind of two-dimensional, you know, especially in the era of the 80s where I think a lot of female characters were badly written.
Mhm.
But she is a very well fleshed out character. She's very intelligent. She helps move the plot on. She is really funny herself, and I think she's written in a way which allows her to be really the star of the show.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds quite experienced. So, do you think that it would be a good idea to watch it now?
Yeah, absolutely. If you can tell that there's a young Robert Downey Jr.
That's right.
And they wear the bras on top of their heads to help make when the woman is made. Um,
So,
I think
are those bras in their heads?
I believe so. I think they're bras on their heads.
Okay. All right.
For me, this is a perfect, like, easygoing movie. Like, you're not going to come away thinking about it for days. Um,
Mhm.
but it's got enough heart that it's more than just a juvenile film about teenage boys. It's got
Mhm.
more heart to it. It's got more style to it than that. So, rainy Sunday afternoon, this is a great movie to put on.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Josh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us today.
No problem.
That would be the end of our podcast today. And well, we'll take your recommendation into account for our next Saturday afternoon.
Awesome. All
What's
right. Well,
what's the name of the movie again?
Weird Science.
Weird Science. Okay, perfect. Thank you. And that's the end of the show, guys. Thank you. See you next week. Have a lovely one.